They called her the most beautiful woman in the village, but no one knew where she lived. She came with the sunrise, vanished before sunset, and never let anyone follow her home. Who was Obiora, really? And what was she hiding behind that gentle smile? This is not just a tale of love and heartbreak. It's a story of identity, sacrifice, and the price of choosing your own path. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong, if you've ever kept parts of yourself hidden for fear of rejection, then Obiora's journey will speak to your soul, because what she faced was more than gossip and misunderstanding. It was a battle between freedom and fate, between the heart and the past. Stay with me, because what starts as a simple love story becomes a legend that will leave you questioning what it really means to be seen, accepted, and truly free. Have you ever met someone so beautiful, so gentle, yet so unknown, that their very presence feels like a riddle waiting to be solved? In the heart of Duru village, there lived such a girl. Her name was Obiora. Duru was a peaceful village tucked between green hills and sun-drenched plains. Life moved slowly there. People rose with the sun, greeted each other with warm smiles, and gathered at the local market to trade goods, share news, and enjoy the rhythm of a simple life. But amidst this ordinary setting lived an extraordinary young woman whose presence stirred whispers and wonder in equal measure: Obiora. Every morning, just as the first rays of sunlight touched the rooftops, Obiora would appear in the marketplace. She was always there before anyone else, arranging her neatly woven baskets filled with the freshest vegetables, fruits, and herbs. People often said her produce seemed to glow, as if kissed by the morning dew and blessed by unseen hands. But it wasn't just the quality of her goods that drew people in. It was her. Obiora was striking. Her skin was smooth and radiant, her eyes deep and thoughtful, her movements graceful, like the soft breeze that danced through the village trees. She wore vibrant traditional cloth wrapped around her with elegance, and her neck and wrists were adorned with red coral beads. But more captivating than her beauty was her gentle spirit. She never raised her voice. She never gossiped. She spoke with a calm tone that made people feel safe, seen, and heard. Men often approached her, enchanted by her appearance and quiet strength. "Obiora," they would say, "you're so beautiful. Will you walk with me? Will you share a meal?" She always responded with a warm smile and the same gentle answer: "Thank you, but I am not ready." And that was that. No one ever saw her after sunset. By the time the market started to wind down and the shadows grew long, Obiora would have already vanished. She never stayed late. She never lingered. She came with the morning and left before the dusk. And no one knew where she went. Many villagers tried to follow her once, to learn where she lived, but somehow she always disappeared from sight. Some claimed she lived near the forest. Others believed she was sent by the spirits to test the hearts of men. Her mystery only deepened the more people speculated. Children adored her, elders respected her, and the market sellers all quietly agreed Obiora was not like anyone else in Duru. She was kind, honest, and hardworking, but she was also untouchable, like the moonlight on water. You could see her, you could admire her, but you could never quite grasp her. And so Obiora continued to live among them, the girl with the warm smile and the hidden life. A living question wrapped in beauty and silence. But in stories like these, where mystery lingers, something, or someone, is always about to change everything. Some stories begin with a smile, but end with a chill. When Emeka first met Obiora, he thought he was stepping into a love story. What he didn't know was that he was also walking straight into a secret the village of Duru had never uncovered. Emeka was a traveler, not of great distances, but of new places and faces. He came to Duru on a bright morning, his bag light, but his curiosity heavy. The market was alive with color, voices, and the scent of ripe fruit. As he wandered between the stalls, looking for vegetables to take home, something, or rather, Someone caught his eye. She stood beside a table of glowing produce, carefully arranging tomatoes and garden greens. Her presence quieted the air around her, as if even the noise of the market bowed in respect. Emeka stopped walking. It was Obiora. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her grace that left him breathless. He couldn't look away. After a moment of gathering his courage, he approached her. "Hello," he said with a polite smile. "My name is Emeka." Obiora looked up and returned his smile with warmth. "I'm Obiora. How can I help you today?" They spoke briefly. She offered him vegetables. He offered her compliments. But Emeka wanted more than carrots and cucumbers. He wanted a connection. Over the following days, he returned to the market again and again. He told himself it was for the produce, but in truth, it was for her. They began to talk more about the changing weather, the quietness of the village, the small joys of market life. Emeka was enchanted by the way Obiora laughed gently and never said too much. She listened more than she spoke, and every word she gave felt like a treasure. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the marketplace began to close, Emeka noticed Obiora packing up her baskets alone. The light had faded, and the path back into the village would soon be swallowed by the coming night. He walked up and offered, "Let me walk you home. It's not safe out here after dark." Obiora hesitated. Her eyes flickered, not with fear but with a quiet concern. Still, she agreed. Together they began the walk into the dusk. At first, the road was peaceful. Crickets chirped, and lanterns glowed faintly along the narrow path. But the deeper they went, the stranger it felt. Emeka began to feel something watching them, not with eyes, but with presence. The air grew heavier. The silence thickened. He turned to glance behind them, but there was nothing there. Still, the feeling clung to him. "I think I should go back," he said softly, his voice touched with unease. Obiora turned to him with calm eyes. "It's all right, Emeka," she said gently. "If you're afraid, you can turn back." She smiled, not mockingly, but with understanding. He nodded and quickly made his way back to the village, his heart pounding. The next morning, he didn't return. Days passed, and Emeka was never seen in Duru again. What had he felt that night? And more importantly, who or what had been walking beside him? Every village has its legends, but sometimes the legend is standing right in front of you, smiling, selling vegetables, and hiding a truth too wild to believe. Obiora wasn't just a mystery. She was something else entirely. Long after Emeka vanished from Duru village, his name lingered like the echo of a question no one dared ask out loud. What had happened that night? Why had he run? And why had Obiora, the girl everyone admired, returned the next day as if nothing had changed? People continued to buy from her stall. Children still waved at her, but the whispers grew stronger. "She's not like us," someone would murmur. "She comes and goes like a shadow. Something isn't right." Yet no one ever confronted her. Not because they feared her, but because deep down they sensed that her silence held power. The truth was more than anyone in Duru could imagine. Obiora was not born in the village. Her true home lay deep in the forest beyond the last footpath, a place untouched by sunlight, where vines curled like sleeping serpents, and the air shimmered with old, hidden magic. That was where her family lived. But they were not human. Obiora's kin were creatures of the old forest, beings who could shapeshift, whisper through trees, and speak to animals. Some had the faces of humans, but the eyes of birds. Others had scales beneath their garments or moved through shadows like smoke. Among them, only Obiora had been born with the rare ability to fully resemble a human, not just in appearance but in voice, behavior, and scent. She could walk among villagers undetected. That gift, her parents warned, was dangerous. From the time she was young, Her mother would say, "You are not like them. You must never get too close. Their world and ours must never mix." Her father, gentle but firm, taught her to respect human life, but not to trust it. Still, Obiora was drawn to the simplicity of village life, the laughter, the trading, the sunlight on clay rooftops. It all fascinated her. So one day, she stepped out of the forest and into the world of men. She chose Duru as her quiet refuge, promising herself she would never form attachments. But the heart rarely follows rules. When Emeka began to visit her stall, her family grew concerned. They watched from the woods, hidden in wind and branch. Sensing danger, they decided to act, not to harm him, but to scare him away. The dark presence he'd felt that night was not his imagination. It was her family's doing, a protective force meant to push him back. It worked. But it also broke something inside Obiora. She had tasted connection, and now she wanted more than her family's rules and the cold safety of the forest. She longed for freedom, for a life of her own choosing. The moment Emeka disappeared, she knew she couldn't keep living a lie. And so Obiora made a decision that would shake both worlds, to step away from the magic she was born into and step toward the life she wanted to create. Some paths are chosen with joy, others are chosen through tears, but the most powerful ones are walked with courage, when a person dares to break away from the world they were born into and walk alone toward the life they truly want. Obiora was ready to make that choice. For years, Obiora had balanced her two lives, the gentle vendor at the village market and the daughter of a mystical, secretive family hidden deep in the forest beyond Duru. Her heart was always torn. In the forest, she had safety, tradition, and a family that loved her fiercely. But in the village, she had tasted something she had never known before: freedom. After Emeka disappeared, chased off by her family's protective magic, Obiora realized just how fragile that freedom was. She had obeyed the rules. She had kept her identity hidden. Yet the moment she let her guard down, even slightly, the world she came from took control. That night, sitting alone beneath the ancient tree that marked the forest's edge, Obiora knew what she had to do. She would leave, not just the market at sunset, not just the lingering gazes of curious villagers. She would leave the life she was told to live. But doing so meant more than defiance. It meant sacrifice. To truly break free, Obiora had to sever the mystical bond that connected her to her family's world, a bond older than her memory, woven through magic, blood, and loyalty. And there was only one being who could help her do it: Abiri, the forest spirit known to grant new beginnings. But never without cost. On a misty morning, when the birds were still silent and the leaves wet with dew, Obiora wrapped herself in a simple cloak and stepped into the heart of the forest. She walked for hours, deeper than she had ever gone before, until the trees grew thick and the light dimmed to a gentle gold. There, at the center of a mossy clearing, stood the shrine of Abiri. Stone and vine wrapped around each other like old friends. Obiora knelt before the ancient altar, heart pounding, and spoke aloud. "Great Abiri, I no longer wish to live under the chains of my birth. I ask for your help to set me free." The spirit appeared not in thunder or flame, but in a soft glow, like moonlight made flesh. Abiri's voice echoed like wind through hollow branches. "Obiora," it said, "if I sever this bond, you will no longer be protected. Your family may turn against you, and their sorrow may become wrath." "I understand," Obiora whispered, "but I still choose freedom." With a slow, deliberate motion, Abiri raised a glowing hand. The air shifted. A wind circled Obiora, lifting her hair, filling her chest with warmth and grief. And then, just like that, it was done. The bond was broken. Obiora stood in the silence, changed forever. She was free, but the spirit's final words rang in her ears. Your freedom is yours now. But beware, a curse born from sorrow does not sleep for long. Sometimes, even when you break free, the past doesn't let go. Obiora had finally chosen freedom. But what she didn't know was that love would still cost her something she couldn't protect: her heart. After her sacred bond with the forest was severed, Obiora returned to Duru with a quiet sense of triumph. For the first time in her life, she was truly free. Free to live among humans, to build a life of her own, and maybe even to fall in love without fear. But what Obiora didn't see was the shadow that now trailed her. The consequence of a mother's grief turned to rage. When her family discovered the break, they were devastated. Her mother, heartbroken by what she saw as betrayal, whispered into the winds, cursing her daughter not with death, but with sorrow. "If she chooses the world of humans," her mother said, "then may she never find happiness among them. May love always leave her." Obiora, unaware of the curse, continued to live her life with grace and hope. She still woke early to bring fresh vegetables to the market. She still smiled kindly at strangers and laughed with the village children. But she also began to open her heart. That's when Kalu arrived. He was a traveling merchant, charming, well-spoken, and generous. His cart brimmed with fine cloth and bright trinkets from distant lands. But when he met Obiora, he stopped looking outward. Her beauty stunned him, but it was her quiet strength and gentleness that truly captivated him. Kalu came back to Duru again and again, not for business, but for her. They spoke often. They walked together. They shared stories as the market faded into twilight. Obiora felt something she hadn't dared to feel in a long time: hope. Eventually, Kalu confessed his feelings. "Obiora," he said one afternoon, "I want to marry you. I want you to come with me to meet my family." Her heart raced. It wasn't just love she saw in his eyes, it was acceptance. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe this time, she wouldn't be left behind. Obiora agreed to go. But as soon as she stepped foot in Kalu's village, the curse stirred. Kalu's mother greeted her with suspicion. She had heard whispers of Obiora's strange past, the suitor who had vanished, the stories that didn't add up. She studied Obiora's face, her silence, her eyes too deep for someone so young. Later that night, Kalu's mother made her decision. "I'm sorry," she said firmly, "but I don't trust this girl. There is something off about her." Kalu was torn. He loved Obiora. But in his world, family meant everything. With tears in his eyes, he took her hand. "Obiora," he whispered, "my mother won't allow it. I'm so sorry." Obiora said nothing. Her silence was louder than grief. She turned and walked away, alone once again. Because when a heart carries a curse, even the sweetest love can vanish like smoke in the wind. How many times can a heart break before it refuses to hope again? For Obiora, the answer was one more time, just enough to send her back into the forest, back to the only place where magic could mend what love had torn apart. After being rejected once again, not because of who she was, but because of what clung to her, Obiora walked through Duru village with her head held high and her heart heavy. The curse, laid on her by her grieving mother, had become more than just a shadow. It was a wall, invisible yet solid, that kept love just out of reach. Every time she tried to draw close to someone, that wall pushed them away. But Obiora was not weak. She had survived loneliness, secrecy, and sorrow. What she couldn't survive was the idea that this pain was permanent. That's why, one quiet dawn, while the village still slept, she turned her steps once again toward the forest, toward Abiri's shrine. The path was familiar now, but it still held the weight of the unknown. She passed trees that whispered old truths and streams that carried forgotten prayers. By the time she reached the moss-covered altar, her feet were sore, her face streaked with tears, and her voice trembling. but determined. Kneeling before the spirit's sacred ground, Obiora whispered, "Great Abiri, I have done what was asked. I broke the bond. I asked for freedom, but I did not know sorrow would follow me like a shadow. Please, I need your help again. I cannot carry this curse any longer." The air grew still. Then, in a gentle swirl of glowing mist, Abiri appeared, ancient, wise, and watching. "You have returned," the spirit said softly, "and the burden weighs on you." Obiora nodded. "Yes. I only wanted love. I never meant to bring pain. I don't want to be feared. I just want to live a life where I can be seen and loved for who I am." Abiri listened. The spirit's glow pulsed with quiet understanding. "I can lift the curse," Abiri finally said. "But all magic comes with balance. If the curse is broken, you must never let anger dwell in your heart. Rage will awaken the curse again, stronger than before." Obiora didn't hesitate. "I promise," she said, voice clear. "No matter how much pain comes, I will not let it poison me." Abiri raised a hand. A soft breeze stirred the trees. Warmth spread through Obiora's chest, like a thread of sorrow finally unraveling. The curse melted away like morning mist. She wept, not from sadness, but from relief. When she stood, she was still the same Obiora, but lighter, freer, hopeful again. She returned to Duru with a quiet resolve. The villagers greeted her with the same smiles, unaware of the battle she had just won. She sold vegetables, gave to children, and walked home with peace in her steps. But deep in her heart, she carried the truth like a whisper. Her freedom had been reclaimed, and this time, no shadow would steal it away. Every fairy tale dreams of a perfect wedding, but what happens when the vows are spoken and the truth is finally set free? Obiora thought her curse was gone, but love has a way of testing even the strongest magic. Life in Duru had returned to a peaceful rhythm. Obiora moved through her days with quiet joy, no longer burdened by sorrow or shadows. The curse had been lifted, her heart was lighter, and though she had not yet found love, she had found something almost as precious: peace. But peace never lasts forever. One warm afternoon, as the market buzzed with laughter and the scent of grilled plantains, a kind-faced man named Chidubem arrived in the village. He wasn't flashy or mysterious. He didn't come with bold words or smooth charm. Instead, he came with gentleness, a rare, comforting energy that made even silence feel safe. He noticed Obiora at once. She was sitting by her usual stall, offering ripe tomatoes with a soft smile. Chidubem approached not with clever lines, but with a simple question. "Are you all right?" That question, so ordinary, so human, reached a part of Obiora that hadn't been touched in years. They began to talk. Day by day they met again, by the stream, at the market, near the trees where the breeze was quietest. Chidubem didn't press her for secrets. He listened. He laughed. And slowly, Obiora allowed herself to believe in something she thought was lost forever: love without fear. Weeks turned into months. Their bond deepened until, one bright morning, Chidubem took her hand and asked, "Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Obiora's eyes. This was the dream she had hidden in her heart, and now it stood before her in truth. She said yes. The village celebrated with joy. On the day of the wedding, the square bloomed with color. Musicians played joyful tunes, villagers danced, children sang, and the sun shone as if it, too, had waited for this moment. Obiora glowed in her wedding attire, her smile brighter than ever. Chidubem couldn't take his eyes off her. Under the warmth of the afternoon sky, they exchanged vows, surrounded by love and blessings. But that night, something changed. As the couple returned to their new home, something stirred inside Obiora. A strange sensation, like a ripple beneath her skin. Her legs weakened. Her breath shortened. She looked at Chidubem, panic rising in her eyes. Then it began. Before she could speak, her body convulsed. Her legs fused together, scales shimmered across her skin. In the span of moments, Obiora transformed into a giant python, her eyes still full of sorrow and love. Chidubem froze. He didn't scream at first, just stared, stunned by the impossible truth. Then, the fear overcame him. He bolted from the house, shouting through the streets, "A snake! A monster! It's Obiora!" The villagers rushed to the scene. Obiora, still coiled and quiet, watched from the shadows of her home. The same people who had praised her now whispered in fear. The curse she thought was gone had never really left, and the love she dared to claim might now be the one thing she could never keep. What if the one who broke your heart was destined to stay by your side forever? In Duru village, justice doesn't always come with punishment. Sometimes, it comes with a lesson wrapped in chains of fate. The night of the wedding had shattered everything. What began as a celebration of love ended in gasps, screams, and whispers that would never fully fade. Obiora, the beloved market girl, had turned into a creature no one could explain, a serpent of mythical size, gliding silently through her own home, her human sorrow still reflected in reptilian eyes. Chidubem had fled, his cries waking the entire village, sending shock and confusion through every hut and heart. But while many feared the serpent, they still remembered Obiora's kindness, her years of service, her laughter with the children, the gentleness she showed even in silence. The elders, torn between fear and fairness, made a decision. They would call the oracle. By morning, the village square was packed. The villagers stood in a solemn circle, waiting. Some with curiosity, others with fear. In the center stood the oracle, draped in flowing cloth, eyes that had seen generations of secrets, and a voice that echoed truth. "Bring her forward," the oracle said. From the shadows, Obiora emerged, still in her snake form, but unthreatening. The villagers held their breath. Then, with a sigh that sounded almost human, she spoke. "I am Obiora. I am not of your world, but I have never brought you harm. I only wanted to live, to love, to be accepted." The oracle nodded slowly, acknowledging the pain beneath her truth. Then they turned to Chidubem, who had stood silent until now, ashamed and pale. "Do you have anything to say?" the oracle asked. The silence was thick, until Chidubem finally stepped forward. His voice trembled. "Yes," he said. "I must confess. I loved Obiora's beauty. I loved her kindness. But I also had other thoughts. Selfish thoughts. I believed I could gain wealth by marrying her. I thought I could win her heart and use her. For her magic, for her mystery." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Even Obiora flinched. "I didn't expect to fall for her," he continued. "But I did, and now I've lost everything." The oracle's face remained still, unreadable. "You wished to possess what you did not understand," they said. "You betrayed trust for gain, and now you must live with the one you tried to use, not as punishment, but as a lesson." A hush fell. Then, in a firm voice, the oracle declared, "You, Chidubem, will not be freed from Obiora. You will stay with her, not as her captor, but as her companion. You will share her life, her truth, and her burden." The villagers were stunned. This was not the justice they expected. Obiora turned to him, eyes weary but soft. Chidubem nodded slowly. "I accept." And so, not as husband and wife, but as two souls bound by fate and failure, they left the village, a serpent and a man, walking together into the forest where truth has no masks. Some journeys don't begin with love. They begin with regret, responsibility, and the chance to grow. When Chidubem entered the forest, he wasn't searching for magic, but what he found there would change him forever. With the oracle's decree still echoing in the villagers' minds, Chidubem and Obiora left Duru behind, not as newlyweds, but as two people bound by truth, mistake, and the possibility of redemption. The villagers watched them disappear into the tree line, unsure whether they were witnessing punishment or the beginning of something more mysterious. The deeper they walked into the forest, the more the world around them changed. The air thickened with enchantment. Trees whispered in languages older than any tongue. The path wound through shimmering pools, glowing moss, and silent creatures who watched them pass with curious, glowing eyes. Chidubem had never seen such a place. He had never felt so far from everything he thought he knew, or so close to something ancient and wise. Obiora led him gently. Though she still shifted between her human form and her true one, she spoke to him as an equal. She didn't blame. She didn't scold. And that was what pierced him the most, her quiet kindness, even after all he had done. They arrived at a hidden clearing, her true home. There, among trees that bent like guardians, stood her family. Not fully human, not fully beast. Some bore feathers for hair, others scales on their faces. They watched Chidubem with careful, unreadable eyes. He bowed his head. "I am sorry," he said softly. "I came into Obiora's life with selfish intent, but I wish to learn now, not because I deserve forgiveness, but because I want to understand." Her mother, once the source of the sorrowful curse, said nothing for a long time. Then finally, she nodded. "You may stay," she said, "but know this. To live here is not to rule. It is to unlearn." And so began Chidubem's transformation. He helped gather water from enchanted springs, learned to communicate with the trees, and listened as Obiora's kin taught him how to hear the forest instead of conquering it. It was hard. His pride was stripped, his ego dissolved. But something new grew in its place: humility, patience, and a reverence for the mystery he had once tried to control. Obiora watched quietly, and slowly trust began to blossom again. She laughed more. She shifted less. She allowed herself little by little to believe that perhaps this time she wouldn't have to choose between her true self and being loved. One evening, while stars hung low like lanterns in the sky, Chidubem sat beside her and whispered, "I didn't come to love a human or a spirit. I came to love you, in every form you take." Obiora smiled, not out of victory but peace, because in the heart of a forest untouched by time, two souls, one broken, one brave, finally met not in fear or duty, but in a truth they had earned. In life, we often carry burdens that others cannot see, wounds from the past, sacrifices made in silence, or truths we're afraid to share. Obiora's journey reminds us that true freedom comes not just from breaking away from what confines us, but from choosing to live authentically, even when it hurts. We may seek love, but unless we face the shadows we carry and allow others to see us fully, love may always slip through our fingers. Her story is not just about magic or curses, but about the courage to walk away from what's familiar to seek something greater: inner peace, self-respect, and the hope of genuine connection. For those of us in the later chapters of life, Obiora teaches a quiet truth: that it is never too late to choose truth over fear, or to begin again with humility. Even when the world misunderstands us, our worth is not diminished. Like the forest that eventually embraced Chidubem, healing takes time, but it is possible. And perhaps the greatest gift we can give, to ourselves and to others, is acceptance without condition, and love that sees through every disguise.